What happens when one of Hollywood's most unpredictable comedians sits down with America's sweetheart for what should have been a light, cheerful interview, but instead turns into one of the most uncomfortable moments in recent television history? That is exactly what unfolded during the now infamous encounter between Jim Carrey and Kelly Clarkson, a segment that sent producers into panic mode and left audiences frozen in disbelief. The Kelly Clarkson Show had built its reputation on warmth and authenticity. Kelly's charm, her kindness, and her natural ability to connect made the show a favorite destination for celebrities promoting their latest projects. So when Jim Carrey's team reached out to book an appearance, the entire production staff was thrilled. Carrey was a beloved comedy icon known for his electric personality and unforgettable film roles, and the plan was simple: highlight his artistic journey and showcase the introspective phase he had entered through painting and sculpture. When the cameras began rolling, everything looked perfectly normal. Kelly's warm introduction set the tone, and Carrey burst onto the stage with his trademark energy, waving playfully to the applauding audience. He sat down wearing that familiar Carrey grin, and Kelly opened the interview by asking about his transition from comedy to visual arts. At first, his answers were exactly what the team expected. He talked about art as a form of therapy, a new way of expressing emotions that comedy alone couldn't contain. But a subtle tension began to creep into his words: a seriousness, a philosophical edge that immediately caught the crew's attention. Carrey's answers shifted from art to existentialism, touching on reality, consciousness, and what he called the illusion of celebrity. With a calm yet unsettling tone, he questioned the nature of everything happening around them. "We're all just playing roles," he said. "You're the cheerful host. I'm the grateful guest. But what's real behind all these smiles and crafted questions?" Kelly laughed, expecting a punchline, but the comedic payoff never came. Instead, Carrey leaned deeper into his reflective mood, challenging the sincerity of the show itself, trying to regain control. Kelly gently redirected the conversation toward his new sculptures, but Carrey seized on her wording, using it to question the scale of not only his art, but the show, the branding, and the entire entertainment machine surrounding them. He asked when she had last had a conversation that wasn't shaped by a corporate agenda. His intensity grew, and for the first time, Kelly's confident smile flickered. The audience sensed something was off, their early laughter fading into uneasy silence. As Kelly attempted once again to steer the discussion toward authenticity and human connection, Carrey interrupted with a laugh, one that was both amused and unsettling. He claimed the only real thing happening in that moment was her desperate attempt to keep control of an interview that had stopped being an interview several minutes ago. The line landed like a shockwave, even through their earpieces. Producers could barely decide whether to cut to commercial or let the tension escalate. By that point, the studio's atmosphere had shifted completely. What began as a routine promotional conversation had transformed into a bizarre, philosophical confrontation that left Kelly struggling to maintain composure and the audience unsure whether they were witnessing performance art, a meltdown, or something entirely different. And with each question and counter-question, Jim Carrey pushed the boundaries further, turning a simple talk show interview into a moment that no one, neither the host, the producers, nor the viewers, would soon forget. Jim leaned back with a knowing smile and told Kelly that the only real thing happening was that her producers were probably losing their minds because he wasn't sticking to the approved script. Kelly attempted to defuse the moment, insisting that they might be diving a little too deep for the audience and suggesting they talk about his upcoming projects. But Jim only chuckled at the phrase, calling his only project the act of waking up himself and helping others see through the elaborate charade of fame and entertainment. He asked Kelly directly whether she was ready to wake up to, or if she would keep playing her part until the curtain fell. The tension in the studio thickened instantly. Kelly's smile tightened, and the once enthusiastic audience fell into uneasy silence, unsure whether they were watching humor, performance art, or something much darker. Kelly held her ground, telling Jim she respected his philosophy, but reminded him that the audience came to be entertained and informed, and that there had to be a balance between his insights and the format of the show. Jim's eyes lit up with almost manic delight. As he repeated her word, format, treating it like a revelation, he applauded slowly, calling it the most honest thing she had said, then launched into a tirade about the show being a container for pretending, and questioned what would happen if someone refused to stay inside that container. Kelly tried to lighten the mood, saying things got interesting when boundaries were pushed, but also pointed out that interesting didn't always mean comfortable. That was when Jim abruptly stood up, shocking the audience, and declared that comfort was the enemy of truth, accusing Kelly of trying to sell the lie that everything was fine and that this was just another cheerful celebrity chat. Producers rushed to the side of the stage, gesturing wildly, but Kelly held up her hand, refusing to shut the moment down. She asked Jim firmly to sit back down so they could continue in a constructive way, but he laughed, accusing her of thinking like a host instead of seeing the value of a genuine human moment. Kelly, visibly drained now, told him directly that this was becoming a problem not only because he was making the audience uncomfortable, but because he was violating the agreement they had made and forcing the show into a corner. With his philosophical monologue, Jim's expression shifted rapidly, as though he were flipping emotional channels. Before settling into something cold, he claimed he had finally exposed the real Kelly Clarkson, not the corporate-friendly personality, or the polished kindness, but a woman frustrated that someone wasn't playing by the rules. Kelly snapped back that the rules existed for a reason, to protect the guests, the audience, and the crew, and to ensure a good experience for everyone involved. She added that what Jim was doing wasn't enlightenment, it was selfish. The word hung between them like a slap. Jim repeated it slowly before accusing her of building her career on being relatable, while carefully controlling every part of her public persona. He accused her of pretending to care about her guest stories while really mining them for content. Kelly stood up, her composure finally cracking, and declared that she did care about her guests, her viewers, and about creating something positive in a world already filled with negativity. Jim scoffed at the word positive, accusing her of selling positivity like a product designed to keep people consuming content, and ignoring the deeper problems in culture and entertainment. Kelly demanded to know how he thought he was helping anyone grow by ambushing her, disrespecting the audience, and hijacking the platform for a personal lecture. Jim's laugh was sharp and brittle as he shot back that at least he was honest about his intentions, unlike her, and claimed she was still pretending this was about connection when it was really about ratings, revenue, and keeping the audience pacified with the illusion of intimacy. Kelly's voice dropped to a dangerously calm whisper as she finally snapped, telling Jim that if he wanted honesty, she had some for him. He wasn't an enlightened truth teller, he wasn't helping anyone, and all he was really doing was projecting his unresolved issues onto people who didn't deserve it. Jim fired back instantly, claiming that boundaries were nothing but artificial walls used to separate people from reality. Kelly countered that boundaries and structure were necessary, that they created safety, trust, and predictability, things the audience relied on when they came to enjoy a show, not to be unwilling witnesses to someone else's unraveling. The word breakdown hit Jim like a slap. His manic intensity faltered for a heartbeat, revealing a flash of vulnerability before snapping back into a rigid mask. He asked quietly whether that was the story she planned to tell the world, that crazy Jim Carrey had a breakdown on her show. Kelly softened her voice and told him she believed he was going through something, but instead of handling it privately or with professional help, he was using her show as therapy, and that wasn't fair to her, the crew, or the audience. For a long moment Jim said nothing, staring at her with an intensity that chilled the entire studio. Then his voice shifted into something small and fragile as he admitted maybe he no longer knew how to deal with anything privately, that the line between the performer Jim Carrey and the person Jim Carrey had dissolved so long ago, that he didn't know what was real anymore, and that perhaps the honesty he was expressing right now was the most real he had felt in years. That crack in his armor softened Kelly as well. For a brief moment the host disappeared, leaving only a compassionate human being recognizing genuine pain in front of her. She told him gently that if he truly was struggling with his identity, she understood. But this was not the place to work through those feelings. But Jim rejected the idea, insisting this was precisely the place, because everyone was always pretending on television. So, wasn't someone refusing to pretend finally meaningful? Kelly agreed that it meant something, but reminded him that he was dragging an entire room of people into his personal crisis without their consent. The audience, shifting anxiously in their seats, looked lost between discomfort, confusion, and concern. Jim held out his arms and gestured to them, accusing them of being terrified of authenticity and wanting him to go back to being the funny entertainer they expected. Kelly corrected him, saying they wanted him to be considerate, and that authenticity didn't require cruelty or disruption. Jim spun back toward her, challenging whether true authenticity was even possible in a system designed to package and sell human experience, insisting that every genuine moment she had ever had was filtered through sponsors, networks, and focus groups. Kelly's jaw tightened as she told him he didn't get to decide which of her moments were real. Some people, she said, had learned how to be genuine while still maintaining professionalism. Jim mocked the phrase real people, accusing her of being so convinced she had perfected the balance between authentic and marketable that she couldn't see the marketable part had completely consumed the authentic. Kelly shot back that he was so convinced destruction equaled enlightenment, that he couldn't see the damage he was causing to people simply trying to do their jobs. The argument escalated further as Jim began pacing restlessly behind his chair, repeating the word positive with loathing and accusing her of maintaining illusions that kept people numb and complacent. Kelly, matching his energy now, demanded to know what was positive about attacking someone who invited him into their space, or making hundreds of people uncomfortable just to make a philosophical point he could have made in countless other ways. Jim turned on her again, declaring that talk shows were where the lies lived, where the illusions were manufactured, and that he was simply refusing to participate. Jim exploded, his composure shattering as he raged against the very nature of the talk show. He accused Kelly of perpetuating illusions, of feeding audiences the comforting lies that everything was fine, that celebrities were just like them, and that consumption equaled connection and entertainment equaled fulfillment. Someone has to break the spell, Kelly, he shouted. Kelly, her own voice sharp and controlled, shot back that breaking spells was not his job. His job, she reminded him, was to come on her show, discuss his art, maybe make people laugh, and treat everyone involved with basic respect. Instead, he had transformed the studio into a personal philosophical battlefield. Jim stopped pacing and stared at her with wild, intense eyes. For 30 years, he said slowly, his career had been about making people laugh so they wouldn't have to confront the emptiness in their lives, performing like a dancing monkey for the entertainment machine. Well, what if I'm done with that job? He asked, his voice raw. Kelly threw her hands up in frustration, insisting that if he wanted to share his philosophy, he could create his own platform, a podcast, a book, a personal space, but he could not hijack her show for a personal crisis. Jim laughed bitterly, dismissing the term. This wasn't a personal crisis, he said. It was a collective awakening, though Kelly cut him off, firmly stating that it was him having a moment, and forcing everyone else to engage with it unwillingly. The words seemed to strike him harder than any she had yet spoken. He stopped moving, his face cycling through conflicting emotions, finally settling into hollow laughter as he admitted she was right. He was using everything at his disposal to avoid dealing with his problems privately, including the audience, the show, and Kelly herself. His voice broke as he confessed that after performing for so long, he had forgotten what it felt like to simply be a person in a room with other people, and that this chaotic confrontation was the most real he had felt in years. The studio was silent. Even Kelly's producer had ceased gesturing. Kelly's tone softened, her professionalism tempered with empathy, as she acknowledged his struggle, but reminded him that it was unfair and unsustainable to make other people responsible for managing his emotions. Jim nodded slowly, the manic energy draining from him, admitting quietly that she was right but pleading, "What am I supposed to do with all of this? What am I supposed to do when I don't know how to be a person anymore?" Kelly, firm but gentle, told him to seek help from trained professionals rather than turning a talk show audience into a therapy group. Jim was silent for a long moment, staring at the floor, before lifting his gaze with clearer eyes than he had shown all day. "I think I need to leave now," he said. Kelly agreed, and as he walked toward the exit, he paused and looked back one last time. Offering a rare compliment, she had handled the situation with more patience and kindness than he deserved. After he disappeared behind the stage curtain, Kelly turned to her stunned audience and crew. The silence hung thick in the air before she spoke, her voice steady yet emotional. She acknowledged that what had just transpired highlighted the difference between authenticity and consideration, between being real and being respectful. "We can be genuine without being destructive," she said, "and honest without being hurtful." Pausing to collect her thoughts, she expressed hope that Jim would find what he was searching for, but in a way that did not force others to pay the price for his personal journey. With that, she signaled to her producer, and the show cut to commercial, leaving viewers worldwide to process one of the most uncomfortable, revealing, and unforgettable celebrity interviews in television history.